Okay, good evening. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you again to the Balkanies for hosting this shir in such a beautiful way. So this is shir number 2 for Hasocher, for the Talmidim of 7th grade, for the fathers of the Talmidim of 7th grade. We're holding on Daf Ayin Vav Amud Aleph, 15 lines from the bottom by the word Pshita. So again, that's Daf Ayin Vav Amud Aleph, 15 lines from the bottom. The word is Pshita. So just a very brief overview of where we're holding and where today's Gemara is going to take us. So the Mishnah, in the beginning of the Perek, the Mishnah started off with a Seicher Su'omnin, Vihitu Zazah, that if somebody hired workers, and then it uses an interesting lashon of Vihitu Zazah, and they tricked each other. So in that particular case, Ein Lam Zalzal Al Tarumis, they could only have complaints. So the first thing that the Gemara did, the Gemara established that Hitu Zazah is not the usual lashon. Usually when you have a story between a owner backing out on the worker or the worker backing out on the balabayas, usually we use the lashon of chazru. So the fact that it says hitu means there's a third person involved in the story. The case must be talking about there's the owner, middleman, and then he went ahead and hired workers. And then we have to find a unique case that would fit this din, that nobody owes anybody money, but it's a case where you could have kindness, but nevertheless you don't get money. And we spent the whole last year, which was the whole Ayin Vav Amud Aleph, trying to figure out that case. So, and then we're still in the middle of that. We're going to go slightly off topic, and we're still going to get back to that. But we're trying to figure out that case. And the Gemara gave one answer and didn't like it, and then the Gemara gave and then we have another answer which was accepted, and then another Ibai same a couple of times. We gave a few answers. So if you remember, the first answer the Gemara tried suggesting was that maybe we're talking about that the owner said 4. And so a higher amount, and the middleman went and said, we're going to pay only 3. So that's the case of our Mishnah. They can't get the money because they agreed to work for 3, but they can have tainus. The Gemara said, you can't even have tainus. They were told 3, they accepted to work for 3. 3 was even the going rate, so like everything is fine. So the Gemara flipped the case. Okay, we're talking about that the owner said 3, and the shliach went ahead and said 4. Then it depended if the shliach says Charcham Alai, or if he says Charcham Al Balabayis, and what the workers, these were workers who are owners themselves. Remember, we went through all the motions. At the end, where we ended off last time, the Gemara ended up saying that actually one of the ways we could learn our Mishnah is that the owner said 4, a higher amount, and the shliach said 3, a lower amount. And you're going to say they accepted to work, but they could still have a taina that Al Timna Taivim Ba'alav. How come you withheld good from us? He was willing to pay 4. There still is a time. In other words, Taka, they agreed to work for 3 and they're only expecting 3 and they're getting paid 3, but there's still a time. That was the last answer that we had. And today's shir, when we turn the page and we get to, let's say, 10 lines from the top, there's going to be another answer how to learn our Mishnah. But right now, we're going to go slightly off topic because we were talking about this whole story where there's a 3-person story, where there's an owner, a middleman, let's call him the shliach, or the middleman, the contractor, the owner, the middleman, and the workers, and what he said and what they answered back. So now we're going to get into a little bit of a side thing where we're going to want to understand what will be the halacha on one particular case. And the way the Gemara is going to ask this question is the Gemara is going to say, in this scenario that we're going to present first, the din will be obvious. We're not masupik what the din will be, but in a slightly different scenario, we're unsure what the din is going to be. So we could do it inside, and then we're going to explain it. Again, we're 15 lines on the bottom. Good evening again. Thank you everybody for coming. And what? Masupik means in doubt. We're unsure. We're trying to figure out what is the din. Right. Thanks for asking that. Yeah.
So
sure.
In the Mishnah, it says that they're both going to have kindness to the others. So you've got the guys who work for somebody else or whatever it is, and then they.
Doesn't say both. It doesn't mean kindness to each other. It means one of them is going to have kindness on the other one. Yeah. So the Gemara now says, Pshita, the din will be obvious in the following case. The Balabayas is willing to pay 3, and he tells his middleman, please go find me workers for 3. And the middleman goes, and Amrli Barba, and he tells workers 4. He tells them a higher amount. Okay? And now, so we already discussed in that case, if he says Charcham Alai, he's responsible to pay the 4th. If he says if he stressed Charcham Al Balabayas, then the Balabayas is then he's not responsible to pay because the Balabayas only said 3. So we already went through that. But now the case is a little different. Now we're getting into that the Shluchim answered something. They gave a very unique response when they accepted the job. and we want to know what their intent is. So it's obvious to us that if the Balabais said 3, and the middleman goes and says 4, the Amri Lay and the workers, when they accept the job, they don't say, okay, yes, they specify, and they say, we intend to come work according to what the Balabais has in mind to pay, right? So in that case, it's obvious to us that Daitayu Ailuya, they don't mean to get less money, that we're going to go with the Balabas. They definitely mean to get the higher amount, which is 4. And when they say, because they're never going to stress that we want to rely on the Balabas to get less money, to get less money. So if the Balabas says 3, which is, by the way, the going rate, I have to add, Balabas says 3, which is the going rate, a shliach comes over here and he says, I'm going to offer you 4, and they're specifying their answer, and they're saying that we're relying on the Balabas. So it's obvious to us, and Rashi explains it really well, but we're not going to do Rashi inside. It's obvious to us that they don't mean to say that we're relying on the Balabas who's only willing to pay 3. Well, they're saying we're relying on you that this is true, that the Balabas is taka willing to pay 4. So all we're trying to figure out now is what do the workers who said what do they have in mind? In this case, it's obvious to us that they have in mind the higher rate. Now, again, who actually has to pay? Because the Balabas said 3, the middleman said 4. It will depend on the Schar Chamalai, Schar Chamal Balabais, which we learned last week. That's the halacha about if the guy has to actually pay it or who pays the 4th one. But what we're trying to figure out is what do the workers even mean when they said Kamei Shamal Balabais? They meant the higher rate. They never meant like we're not sure if you're really offering 4. Maybe the Balabas said only 3. We're going to take 3. They for sure meant more money, obviously. But
how did they know the Balabas is offering 4?
No, the shliach is offering 4. Balabas said 3, which is the going rate. Shliach comes and says 4. They say, yeah, we're going to do it like the Balabas said. So when they say that, they don't mean that like maybe he didn't say 4. They mean to say we're relying on you that this guy's taka willing to pay 4, which is above the going rate.
If Rabbi said higher, and they could kind of higher, they're definitely not going lower than the Shliach says.
You have nothing to lose, right?
If the Balabais would offer, let's say 4.5.
No, so now we're going to see the flip case. Now we're going to see the flip case. But the Gemara says Ella, but rather Amali Balabais Barba. What's if it's a case where the Balabas said 4 taka? Va'azal iyu, and the worker went and made it less. Va'azal iyu and Amrlu Betlasa, and he went and he said 3. And they have no idea that the Balabas originally offered 4, and 3 is the going rate. This Balabas was willing to pay more, but he went and told them 3. He got them the Balabas cheaper workers for 3, which was the going rate. Va'amri, and in that case also they respond Kamash Shamar Balabais. So here we're not sure. What do they mean by Kamash Shamar Balabais? Adibura didei kasamchi? Are they relying on his words? Are they relying on the words of the Balabais? And in other words, when they say Kamash Shamar Balabais, it means as follows: the Amri that they say, the Amri that they're telling him, they're telling the Shliach, Mehem Naslan, we believe you, the Hachi Amar Balabais. So again, I'm sorry, they're relying on the words of the Shliach. They're relying on the words of the Shliach. That's what they mean by Kamash Shamar Balabais, and they really relying on the higher rate. And when they say Kamash Shamar Balabais, they just mean to say, we're trusting you that this is what the Balabais said. Or perhaps Adibur the Balabais Kasamchi, and they're relying on the words of the Balabais. What? Who said 3? Yeah, they're relying on the words of the Balabais who said 3. No, it gets confusing. Sorry. This is a case where the Balabais, let's speak it out. The Balabais says 4. You can help me out here. It gets confusing sometimes. I'm tripping up on it here. Balabais says 4. The Shliach goes in, he says 3. The workers go and say whatever the Balabas said. So we're not sure what the Shliach mean, what the workers mean when they say what the Balabas says. Do they mean that we're not taking your word for granted that it's only 3? Maybe the Balabas here is a guy who's willing to pay more, and Kamash Shamar Balabais means that they're actually relying on the Balabais. Or does it mean that we rely on you, like we said before, like we said in the other case, that we're relying on you that this is what the Balabas said? What will the difference be of what they have in mind? It will be a difference, because if they're telling the guy that we're relying on you that this is what the Balabas said, it means that they agreed to work for 3. Later, when they find out that the Balabas was willing to pay 4, that will be the classic case of Tarumas. That they have Tarumas, we could have got 4, but when they said Kamash Shamar Balabais, they accepted 3. But if Kamash Shamar Balabais means that they are telling the Shliach, you're offering us the going rate, we don't know, maybe this Balabas is willing to pay more, we're going to work for you, Kamash Shamar Balabais, and they literally meant Kamash Shamar Balabais, and they were relying not on the Dibur the day of the Shliach, but they were relying on the Dibur of the Balabais. They actually never agreed to work for 3. they actually meant to work for 4. They wanted to go find out if Taka, maybe this balabas is a guy who's willing to pay above the going rate. And in that case, they could expect 4, not just have tinus, they get paid for.
Maybe he's usually a guy who overpays.
Yeah, and they know who he's representing, so they
The shliach is this guy who's.
exactly. So they tell the shliach, listen, we're going to go to work, but we're getting paid from him, and they meant that literally. So in that case, they actually, you can't say like the Gemara said, savar v'kibul. Okay, you have tarumis, altim natayv. They were never savar v'kibul. They never agreed to work for 3. They actually meant to work for 4. They just didn't know what the number was, or was it like, when they say, they say, we're relying on you that this is what the Balabas said. So in this case, we're not sure what the workers mean when they say that quote, is it a dibur day or a dibur of the Balabas? And there's an actual difference if it's going to be, Savar v'kibul ne'avataina, or they actually could demand getting paid for it. So now the Gemara is going to try to bring a raya from a halacha and gittin about a get, and we're going to have to make a brief akdama. And the Gemara is going to attempt to bring a raya from Allah over there, Allah about a get, that we're able to see when a shliach says something like, when the guy says something like this to the shliach, what does he have in mind? And then the Gemara is going to slug up the raya. So by a get, let's just establish what a get is. A get is when a husband wants to divorce his wife, he has to write a get. So he has to give the get, and she has to receive the get. So classic get is that he writes the get and he hands it to her. The moment that she receives the get, she's megureshes. She's divorced. Halachically divorced. Now, could there be a shliach involved in delivering the get? There could be. The husband could appoint one type of shliach. He's called a shliach l'haylacha. A woman could appoint another type of shliach called a shliach l'kabbalah. A husband could appoint a shliach to represent him. His job was to give the get. He could give a guy a get. Please go deliver it to my wife. So if the shliach l'haylacha takes the get, he holds it. He's representing the husband. He travels to the woman. He hands it to her. She gets divorced. She could appoint a shliach to represent her, so to receive the get on her behalf. So the shliach l'kabbalah travels to the husband to go pick up the get. The moment the shliach l'kabbalah receives the get, the woman's divorced, even if the get never reached her hands, because her shliach that she appointed to be a shliach l'kabbalah received the get. That's the classic case. So that's what a regular shliach l'haylacha is and a regular shliach l'kabbalah. And it's easy to understand that the man is able to appoint a shliach l'haylacha and a woman is able to appoint a shliach l'kabbalah, and their function is different because when a shliach l'haylacha has the get, the gerushin does not transpire until he delivers it to the woman. When the shliach l'kabbalah receives the get, that moment that he receives it on behalf of the woman, the gerushin takes place. So that's the classic case. But then we have an interesting case which goes as follows. Tashema, we're going to come and bring you a raya. The woman, have li giti. The lady tells the man, please go bring a get. In other words, she doesn't appoint the shliach l'kabbalah. She asks a guy to go offer the man to be a shliach l'haylacha. Like, go to my guy, my man, that we're about to get divorced, and bring the get to me. Please go become a shliach l'haylacha. Now, obviously, she can't appoint him as a shliach l'haylacha, but she's asking this person to go like bump into him or go offer him and get that role from you. Havili giti. So this guy goes to the man, but when he comes, he changes what he said. So here's a story with an original person and the shliach changing. When he comes now to the man, he says that your wife told me his skabali giti. Your wife said that I should be makabel the get on her behalf. So he didn't say the truth because she asked him to go become a shliach l'haylacha, which is a unique thing for a woman to do. So when he came, he said, by the way, your wife asked me to be a shliach l'kabbalah. That's what he said, which is not the truth. And then in that case, V'hu Amar, he says, oh, she asked you to be a shliach l'kabbalah. Hey, look, come on, here, take the get according to what she appointed you to be, like what she said. Here's the get. Hey, look, come on. That's the case. So Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravu, Amar Rav. We learned the halacha in the name of Rav. Rav was one of the greatest of Miraim, and Rav says that this get is not going to work. Not just it's not going to work, and he's going to explain why. Afilu higia get liyada. Even if this guy takes the get, and even if he ends up going all the way to the woman and ends up delivering it, so the get is in the hands of the woman, Eina Megrashis is not going to be a good get. Why? The Gemara is going to say, so we'll do it inside. From this halacha, the Rav says that it's not a good get, even if it reaches her hand. We can derive from this adibure didei kasamich, that the man, when he was approached by the shliach and he said heilach kamash amra, that he was really relying on the shliach. That he's really relying on the shliach. The adibure didei kasamich. One second. Adibure didei kasamich. That is relying on his words, and because he said that my wife made me a shliach Kabbalah. So when the man gave it to him, he was intending to give a shliach Kabbalah. But truthfully, he never was a shliach Kabbalah. He never appointed him as a shliach halacha either, because he said we're understanding right now is that he's relying on the shliach's interpretation. When he says kamasha amra, halach kamasha amra, he means the way the shliach said it. So the shliach said that he's a shliach Kabbalah, which is false. So he never became a shliach Kabbalah. So obviously, if he gets the get, the gerusha won't take place then. And why does the gerusha not even take place when it reaches all the way to the wife? Because the man who has in his power to appoint him to be a shliach le'alacha never made him a shliach le'alacha either. Because when he said halach kamasha amra, he was relying on the shliach's words that he's really a shliach Kabbalah.
Masha Amra, like she said. So maybe.
No, when we say shamas minad dabur di day kasamach, period.
Original case.
Yeah. But when he says halach that I'm doing kamasha amra, he obviously means that I trust you that this is what she said. That not that
Like this,
I don't
whole
believe
shliach
you.
Is nullified. The whole shliach, he can't be any more a shliach because he's giving it to him as a shliach l'halacha, and the woman really only sent him to be a shliach. No, that she sent him to be a shliach l'halacha, and he's giving it as a.
He gave it to him as a shliach Kabbalah.
He could pull it apart, yeah, he could make him a shliach. The reason why he can't, because he says, as she said.
And that's
And that contradicts it. But technically, he could give them as a shliach halacha if he wants to.
But in this case, she had changed the word.
Would the shliach l'halacha and shliach Kabbalah be the same person?
But if the din was, the Gemara continues. If when he says these words, oh by the way, halach kamasha amra, he actually means what she said. So what does she say? She originally asked him to become a shliach Kabbalah. He's saying to the shliach who lied and said I'm a shliach Kabbalah. She originally made him a shliach halacha. He came and he said I'm a shliach Kabbalah, but he's smart and he says I'm making you the shliach like she really said. And if it's really a dibura dida on her words that he's saimach, then when he gave him the get, he actually made him a shliach halacha. And the husband could do that. So when the get should reach the woman's hand, at least then the gerushin should take place. But Rav Paskin, let me just finish this point. Rav Paskin that the get doesn't work even when it reaches her hand. Is a raya that when he says halach kamasha amra, he's actually relying on the word of the shliach, and kamasha amra doesn't mean what she said. It means I rely on you that this is what she said, but he's actually relying on the shliach's version, and therefore it's no get there because shliach Kabbalah she never became. He never became. She never appointed him to be a shliach Kabbalah. So the shliach was never really a shliach Kabbalah. So of course, when he gets the get, there's no gerushin. The man never made him a shliach halacha because he said that I believe you that you're a shliach Kabbalah, and I'm relying on that. So the get was never sent properly either. So it's not a get. But if when the man says "Heilach kemasha amra," he means to rely that what I don't care what your version is of it. I mean what the wife really said. The wife had asked him to become a shliach le'alacha. The man has the power to make him a shliach le'alacha. So when the man says, "Here's the get," Heilach kemasha amra, at least when the get reaches the woman, like any case of shliach le'alacha, the gerushin should take place. So from the fact that Rav Paskin that the gerushin doesn't take place, even when the get reaches her. So we see from there that when a man says to the shliach this vague quote, "Kamasha Amra," I'm relying on what she said, he's actually relying on the shliach that I'm relying on what you're telling me is the truth, and that's what really happened. So now we can interpret that back to our case, in the financial case, that when they tell the workers that I'm relying on you, Kamasha Amra Baal Bayis, they're not saying we don't trust you, we want to see maybe the Baal Bayis is willing to pay more. They actually mean to say we're relying on you that this is what the Baal Bayis actually really said.
Maybe it's a special preserver in the case of the get, because they have to be more careful. If she is or isn't in the Kadeshus, or if she's divorced or not.
Of course, you have to be more careful by get, but the fact that there's a very good proof from here that the fact that Rav says that it's not a get whatsoever, that he was relying on the Bura day of the shliach. So therefore, this person never became a shliach le'alacha and not a shliach Kabbalah, because otherwise, if he was really relying on what the woman said, and that's what he meant by Heilach Kamasha Amra, at least when the get reaches her, he should have been divorced.
So they have no time.
What?
In that case, they have no time.
What do you mean by no timeless?
They can't complain on them because they trust the shliach. Even the shliach.
You want to go back to our financial case? So according to this, we're saying that in a case where a worker's owner says 4, and the shliach comes and says 3, and In the case where the second case, what was the second
Yeah,
case?
we just-
Yeah, the owner says 4 and the shliach says 3, and they go and they say Kamash Amar Baal Bayis. They don't. They're actually agreeing. They're accepting to work for 3, and they're basically telling the guy, "We believe you that this is what the owner said," and so it's saver v'kibul in that case. Later they can have tinus that altim natav. Oh, we heard, but they can't claim to get paid 4 because they agreed to work for 3. That's what they meant when they said Kamash Amar Baal Bayis. Just like we see here from this get case, that when the man says, "Hey, look, Kamash Amar Rahi," we're relying on the way the shliach presents the Mishaliach's version.
Why did they add those two words?
Which words?
Commercial.
It's a good question. If you're extra clear, like a lot of Gemaras, I always tell this to the kids, if you're very clear and everything's spelled out, there's nothing to argue. And then the Gemara doesn't have to figure out what you had in mind. You were clear. Problem is when you're vague, and that happens. It happens even today.
Next to the workers?
Yeah.
They say, I'll do very, very good. You don't. I could do good, you know.
I mean, this is even today, it's the ways of the world. We're always like, I thought you meant this, I didn't realize you meant that, right? So this is it. So the Gemara is getting about what do people mean? What do they really mean when they say that? Or halachically, how do we interpret that? So one case was Pshita, one case we weren't sure, and we brought a raya now from a case of Gittin, which we're in the middle of saying. We're in the middle of saying the E Salkadaita, we're saying, because had it been otherwise. The E Salkadaita, because if you want to say that the da kasamech, that when the man says, hey, look, Mashamar is actually relying on what she truly said, and she asked him, please go become a shliach le'lacha. So then, she should at least be considered divorced when the get actually reaches her hand. So now Rav Ashi is going to say, I'm Rav Ashi, we can turn the page. And Rav Ashi is going to say, I don't know how you can make such a comparison. You cannot compare our case of the money case to the get case. And then Rav Ashi says, if the case by Gittin, so I'm going to say the Gemara like the opposite of the way the Gemara says it. It's just a little easier to understand. The Gemara right now is going to say something along these lines. The Gemara is going to say, Rav Ashi says, you cannot compare. What you just did comparing that get case to our money case, you cannot compare. If the get case was reverse, that the woman said, please go be a shliach Kabbalah, like a regular woman could do. And the man misrepresents, and he comes to the husband and he says, your wife asked me to become a shliach leilacha. So if the case was opposite, so then we could bring a raya, depending what that case, we don't have a quote of what Rav holds in that case. It's all hypothetical. If it would have been like that, had Rav Paskin this, we could bring a raya one way. Had Rav Paskin this, we could bring a raya another way. But then Rav Ashi concludes, but the way we learn the case right now, the reason why it's Eina Megareshes, we're saying that it's Eina Megareshes because it shows that the husband's relying on the version of the way the ship presenting it. Rav Ashi says, no, that's not why it's Eina Megareshes. It's Eina Megareshes because the shliach was mevatel his shluchas legamri. He totally was oiker his shluchas. Why was he totally oiker his shluchas? Because the woman asked him to be a shliach leilacha, which means he has to go to the husband, get the get, say, please make me a shliach leilacha, and then he has to go all the way back. So it means, so why did he go and he say, I want to be a shliach Kabbalah? Because he was lazy. So he actually doesn't want to be a shliach leilacha. He doesn't want to have to go all the way back to the woman. So he goes to the man and he says, your wife said I'm a shliach Kabbalah. So he goes and he tries to get away being a shliach Kabbalah. So he's not going to have to go back to where she is to bring her to get.
She never made him the shliach Kabbalah.
Yeah, she never made him as a shliach Kabbalah. So obviously, when he gets the get, she's not divorced. Now, even if you're going to say that, it could be that when the man says, "Hey, he's actually relying on her, and he's actually appointing him to be a shliach leilacha, because Hey means what she said, and she said shliach leilacha, but he gave us the clearest intent that he doesn't want to be a shliach leilacha. So from today to tomorrow, the man could appoint him to be a shliach leilacha, but he's not, because the fact that he tried changing it to be a shliach Kabbalah means he's lazy. Or you have to say lazy, it means he has no interest in going back. So it could be, don't bring me a proof that when the guy said, Halach Mashamra is relying on his words. Maybe Halach Mashamra could be relying on the woman's words. So the woman said, Shliach Le'lacha, that's what the man has in mind. The man has the power to make him a Shliach Le'lacha. But the reason why the get won't work is because the Shliach is not interested in being a Shliach Le'lacha. Then even if the Shliach changes his mind, he says, you know what, let me go take this get. It's too late. When he got the get, he resigned from being a shliach. A shliach Kabbalah, he never was, obviously. The woman never asked him to be a shliach Kabbalah. So he never was. A shliach leilacha, he technically could be, because the woman asked him to become one. It's not in her power to do it. The man said, Hey, and maybe he meant whatever the wife said, so maybe he actually made him a shliach leilacha. but his intent is clear to us that he has no interest in going back to her. That's why he said, let me just be a shliach Kabbalah. So he's ois shliach. He was oiker shliach completely. So it's not because he's relying on Dibur Didei, and that's why it didn't work, because how did he rely on Dibur Didei? Would it work? We have a proof from Rav. No proof. In this case, it's not a raya at all. Yeah, but the Gemara is going to say if the case would be opposite, had that case existed, and the case could exist, but had it existed as a halacha, as a recorded halacha, and had Rav shared with us his point of view, then we would have been able to bring a raya. So that's what we're going to go through right now.
The way Rashi explains it earlier, Rashi explains it earlier
Yeah.
there, is that being that he came to be a shliach, he came and he said he's a shliach with Kabbalah.
Yeah,
And really, he was meant to be a shliach lahelacha.
right.
So now, when the husband gave the shliach the get,
Yeah, he said, "Hey, look,
He
Kamasha
said-
Amra."
and he's
And if he has in mind that what she
and
said is
he
the
thinks-
truth,
So he thinks that now basically the husband is making her into a shliach of Kabbalah. That's not it.
no, that's only if he's relying on the word today. But then we said the Esau Kadaitach that's relying on the word Didah.
That's not
Yeah,
it.
then we said that the get should have worked when you reached the husband. And so we said it doesn't work. So we said, oh, it's a raya, it's a the word today. Now we're saying no raya. Maybe it's Taka relying on the word Didah, but the shliach says shliach anyway.
He's not doing what it's.
Yeah, because he revealed to us that he has no interest in going back to her. So the husband might have actually appointed him as a shliach leilacha, because when the husband said, "Hey, Kamasha Amra," maybe he meant like the woman said, and maybe taka shliach leilacha, but he's a shliach. So he could want to make him a shliach leilacha, but the guy is not willing to be one now. And then if he changes his mind and brings it, it doesn't work either. You weren't a shliach when you got it, so that doesn't work. So the way the Gemara does it is the Gemara is going to say, how could you compare this case? And then the Gemara says, if he would have learned it different. So first the Gemara is going to do the if. And then the Gemara is going to conclude why the way we had it is not a raya to our case. And the Gemara ends right there. And we're left with our question. When you say, when they say, we're unsure if they mean that we trust that this is what the Baal said, or we actually mean to rely on the Baal. So let's do the Gemara inside. Amar Ravashi says, Hachi hashta, in Yiddish we teach it. Was far zugleich is this? How can you compare this? Literally, hachi means azoi, like so, and hashta means now. So, like in English, there's even an expression like really now, like you kidding me? Like you want to compare this? This is so different. And then the Gemara says, Bishlama, it would be good, and we would understand it. If the case would have been opposite, in an opposite case, where a woman tells a man he's skabali giti, go be mashliach l'kabbalah, as a woman could and does usually do, but he changes it and makes this into a weird case, and he goes to the guy and he says, he tells the man, your wife asked me to be a shliach leilacha, so could I get the get and bring it back to her? And in that case, he would say, hey, lach, kamasha amra, here's the get, kamasha amra. So now, if that would be the case, so if it would be, it didn't actually happen, so but if it would be that Amr Nachman Amr Rav, if it would have been that Rav Nachman Baravu sends an Rav, that Mishigi get liyad dai megreshes, that when the get reaches the shliach's hand, right away she's megreshes. Alma, we can bring a very good proof from there that the bur the daka samech, that when he says hey lach kamasha amra, he's relying on her words, not the shliach's words, and her words were to make him a shliach Kabbalah. So the moment the shliach got the get, the gerushin transpired. What? Inami, or also if it would have been different. Had Rav Paskin Mishigi get liyad megareshes, that the get will transpire if this get when the get reaches her hand, that's when should be megareshes. So then from there would be a very good raya. Alma, we would see that he's relying on the words of the shliach, because the woman said be a shliach Kabbalah. The husband comes, the shliach comes and says, by the way, your wife asked me to be a shliach Halach and to bring her to get. The man says, hey, look, if he means to say, I trust you that you're a shliach Halach, and that's what the wife said, he appointed him a shliach Halach, and the man went and took the get back, and he volunteered to be a shliach Halach, so it should work at least when it's mishigeh get liyadai. So if Rav in that case would have paskin that the get is good, mishigeh liyadah, we would understand that hey, look, means relying on her words. If in that case he would have paskin that your Megareshes, when the get reaches all the way back to her, it means that when the husband said, hey, Amra, means he's relying on the Shliach's words, who he made himself a Shliach L'Haylacha.
Why would he do it? Give him money.
I don't know.
Get paid.
Yeah?
Well,
I don't know why.
From the owner. From the
Why? He could have had an easy time. The wife said, be a Shliach L'Kabbalah, he could go get the get done. He says, your wife asked me to be a Shliach
He wants to go
L'Haylacha.
back and get paid. Get some more money from the
who?
husband. I'll be your
Oh, the husband had to pay him. I don't know if there's always payment involved. The shluch is like Could you take this from me? I'm not sure why. I don't know why he would do it, but if it happened, because the guy's lazy. Yeah. I don't think it says why. I don't remember. But now the Gemara concludes, Elahasam, but there, in the case that we had on the bottom of the page before, the actual, what? None of that happened. That's hypothetical, that if there would have been such a halacha, and had Rav Nachman paskin one way, it would be a good raya one way. Had he paskin the other way, it'd be an excellent raya the other way. But we don't know what Rav says in that case. It's not recorded. But Elahasam, in the case that is recorded that you brought down before, where it's the opposite case, the wife was the one who said something interesting. Please be mishlich halacha. Go become shlich halacha. He went and said, I want to be a shlich kabbalah. So in that case, the reason why it doesn't work is not because of the bird the kasamich. It's mishum the akar shliach l'shlichusim gamri. He completely removed himself from being a shliach. The amarle shliach, the kabbalah, the amarle shliach l'kabbalah havina le'lacha le'havina, because he means to say, I'm not interested in. I'm only agreeing to be a shlich kabbalah. I'm not interested in going to be a shlich le'lacha. So he's trying to change it to be a shlich kabbalah, but nobody ever made him a shlich kabbalah. And a shlich le'lacha, maybe the husband's making him one, but he doesn't agree to be a shlich le'lacha. So over here, the shlichus never ever started, and that's why in that case, Rav Taka paskind ain't a megareshes, not when it reaches him and not when it reaches her. It's ain't a megareshes completely because there's no shlichus that took place over there. Okay, that was like the hardest part for the first like 2-3 blot of the whole Hasocher. Now we can go back to regular Gemara. So now the Gemara is going to continue to give. I think we're holding like our 5th answer. Last week we were like 4. I think this is answer number 5. I didn't count up the numbers tonight, but it's something along those lines where we wanted to understand our Mishnah. It said Hasocher es ha'umnin, and then it says v'hitu zeh. They tricked each other. And ein lem zalzal truma. So originally, the first thing our Gemara did, we established that because it says hitu, it means that workers were involved, that workers each other. Because if it was just a balabayas payalim relationship, it would have said chazru like it does in the whole shas. And because of that, we spent the whole amud figuring out what's the case. There's an owner and there's a middleman and there's a worker. Did he say 4? Did he say 3? The guy was a worker. He did a better job. He thought he was getting paid more. He has tinus. We did all that. Now the Gemara is going to give the most simple answer of all. The Gemara is going to say, by the way, even for a balabayas to a worker relationship without any middleman, it's appropriate to use the word hitu. It's not hakachazru is the standard language, but I'll prove to you from a brisa that we sometimes say hitu even when it's a balabayas directly to a worker. So you don't have to go through all these motions that we're talking about, a balabayas and a middleman and a worker. What did he saying? What did he mean? And what were they relying on? You can take all that away. And the case in our Mishnah of a Hasocher es ha'umnin, somebody who hired workers, we're just talking about a balabas and a worker, they backed out on each other, just like what chazru would mean. And they backed out, you can only have tinus. Why? Because if I hire a worker and I say, please drive me to JFK tomorrow, and then you call me tonight and say, I don't want to do it. I'm upset. I have to find a new driver now, but that's it. Or vice versa. If the workers back out on the balabayas, what? No, we're talking about you. So it depends. If you don't show up mid-job, if there's a loss, are there other workers available? And the Gemara deals with these cases. But the standard case, when the halach would be, ein lem zazal terumas, is basically I hired you, you made up a price, and you backed out. In a reasonable case, you backed out. So I'm a little annoyed at you. I'm annoyed at you because you backed out. Now I need to find new workers, or vice versa. Let's say I hire a guy to take me to JFK tomorrow. Then he calls me and he backs. I say, sorry, I can't take you. Now I need to find a new taxi driver. So I'm annoyed, but nobody owes anybody money, and it's a worker and a balbus, and there's no third person involved in the story. It's a very simple answer. Now, because we're going to go, so the answer is very simple, that the Mishnah is really talking about just the balabas and a worker, and then we're going to say the Tanya, like we see in a brisa, that he too could be talking about a worker and a balabas. But we're going to quote this very long brisa because we need only a part of it. We're going to quote the whole thing, and then like the next whole block, like meaning Amud Vav Amud Beis the rest, and the whole Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph, and somewhere all the way till after you turn the page, somewhere even in the middle of Ayin Zayin, it's all going to be explaining this brisa. So we're going off our Mishnah, but it's all related to the cases of workers. It's all on the topic, but we're going to be going through case by case and din by din of this brisa that we're about to learn now. Very large brisa. So that's what we're holding. And tonight, we'll hopefully go for the next 21 minutes as far as we can. It's easier tomorrow, so we could pick up speed right now. So we're holding on the line of
So back to the case of
Iba Yasema. The first word of the line is Avina. It's about 10 lines from the top.
all right.
Yeah.
Going back to the case of the get.
Yeah.
Bottom line is why is the get not good?
Which case? The case that was on the bottom of the page?
Yeah.
Why is the get not good?
To get it.
Because the way the bottom line is, because the guy is never made a proper shliach. A shliach Kabbalah, he's not, because the woman never made him one. And a shliach Leilacha, he's not, because he clearly doesn't want to be one.
I'm saying the second case where she made him into a Kabbalah,
Yeah.
and he went and said, only for halacha.
So we're not sure what the halacha is in that case. It could be the halacha is that she's divorced when the shliach gets it, or the halacha will be that she's divorced when she gets it. And depending what the halacha would be, we would understand what halacha believes, what the man meant when he said hey,
Why
but
can't we say?
we don't know what the halacha is in that case.
Why can't we say woman when she's sending a shliach
Yeah.
for a get, she wants to get divorced? Obviously, she wants to
Okay.
get just for fun.
Okay, of course.
So it doesn't matter what the shliach says to her husband, she wants to get divorced. So as soon as he gets that document, whether she gets her, okay,
The
there
shlichus has to work for it to happen.
she doesn't work whether he gets it or whether she receives it. But either way,
Yeah.
why according to Rav?
No, in that version, where we're assuming Rav would paskin that she is divorced, we're just not sure when the divorce will happen. We're not saying in that case in Migrashas. We're saying if Rav would paskin that he divorced when he gets it, then it means that he relied that he's a shliach la'ilacha, l'shliach Kabbalah. And if he divorced when she gets it, it means that he relied that she's shliach
Right, so we're
Kabbalah.
not sure in the first case. So we're not sure in the second case, but in the first case, we are sure. Rav says even
It's a
when she
real
gets
quote
it,
of Rav.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even when she gets it, there's no
Because
divorce.
there's no shlichus there.
My question is, if the woman is sending someone for divorce, it's not stop sending for fun. So why is Rav saying even if she gets it, it's still
Because there was no shlichus there. The get never reached her properly, not through a shliach le'lacha, not through shliach Kabbalah. Shliach Kabbalah, he was never appointed to be, and shliach le'lacha, he never agreed to be.
She means to say, I want my divorce. Go get it.
It doesn't work like that. She wanted him to be a shliach le'lacha. She didn't say be a shliach Kabbalah. You're saying that she's so desperate to get divorced, she doesn't care. No, then she should have made him actually shliach Kabbalah. She didn't,
That means someone.
She had to make him shliach Kabbalah.
and she could have, and he didn't, and she didn't.
He didn't, and when the husband's giving it, and he's like.
He's obviously not interested in going to her.
But it's not-
All right, let's go now to the next Gemara. So the first word of the line is Havina. This Gemara is much easier right now. This is an answer on the original question of what's the case of our Mishnah. If you want, I can tell you, Hi Tana, the Tana of our Mishnah, Chazru Nami Hitu Karilei. The case of Chazru, where a worker backs out on an owner, or owner backs out on a worker, he refers to it as Hitu, and it works. I'll show you clearly that a Tana could speak like that, the Tanya, because we learned in the Brisa, assuming somebody rents workers, Hitu es Balabayas, and they trick the Balabayas. So it doesn't say Vihitu says that, says clearly it's workers to Balabayas and says Vihitu. Or it says Oy Balabayas, Hita Oisan, or if the Balabayas was Mata them. It doesn't say the word Chazru, it says Hitu. So you see clearly, and here's our answer already. Again, and now we're just quoting a Brisa. So in that case is, like our Mishnah said, Ein Lehem Zel Zel Terumas. This Brisa is like exactly the case of our Mishnah, that a Balabayas hired a worker and they backed out, or the workers accepted a job and backed out. You could only have complaints. And then the Brisa is going to give a lot of qualifications and a lot of clarifying when only tinus. There's cases where you have to pay. There's cases where you don't need to pay, and how much to pay. And this is going to be a lengthy Brisa with a lot of dinim. And then the Gemara is going to go through a lot of these dinim in detail to understand them all. So Bamed Dvar Mamurim, when is it that if the owner backs out, he won't have to pay the workers? They never went to the job. In other words, like someone mentioned before, the night before I say, cancel, don't pick me up from JFK. But at 5 a.m., the guy shows up at my door, I'm here to take you to JFK. You booked me last night. And I say, sorry, I'm not going. I'm already at your door. I already got up early. I already showed up at the job. So by Medram, I'm wearing this Shalei Holchu. But if they went, so the examples that the Mishnah has here is Holchu Chamarim Vleimatsu Tua, a guy that hired Chamarim, which are like donkey drivers, but they go pick up stuff for you. They're Uber package. Right, so they sent Chamarim to go get Tvua. So the Chamarim actually went. They were supposed to go to the next town and bring back for you 100 boxes of Tvua, but the Tvua wasn't there to pick up. So they went to do the job, but they never did the job because there was no Tvua to pick up. Or Payalin, somebody hired workers to like plow his field, Umatza Sadak Shilech, or to do something on his field, and they found the field very wet, so it was not operable. He couldn't work on the field that day. It was very muddy or puddles or a lot of rain there. So these people actually went to their job, but then the job was not able to get done. So in that case, it's already different. In that case, he has to pay them in full. Pay them because they showed up to the work. Too bad that the job couldn't get done. They came to work. Now the Gemara is right away going to, not right, it's all a Brisa. The Brisa is right away going to qualify what it means pay them in full. It doesn't mean full. It means, Bryce says, you can't compare somebody who comes back from that city with loaded up donkeys. It's more gas, more energy, more work. And somebody who comes empty. Same thing, you can't compare Isa Malacha to workers who go to the field and actually plow and work all day. About the workers who went there and they got there and they couldn't do the work and they did nothing. You can't compare them. So therefore, we don't mean, the Brisa doesn't mean that you pay them in full, but you pay them like a Yeshivato. You pay them, you ask the person, how much would you be willing to take less to do this job and not have to actually slip the packages? Or how much would you be willing to get hired for a day to sit by the field and not have to work in the field? So you don't get the full price because at the end of the day, they didn't work. You can't pay them nothing because they showed up to work. You pay them the fair amount that a person would agree to take a cut in his pay and not have to schwitz that day. That's how much you pay them. So what? But that's, no, Terumas is not in this case. This case, there's payment. It's not Terumas, it's payment. But, well,
They could have got more.
Why couldn't they?
You would have knocked
Yeah.
that down and they could have got a normal job and got paid.
right, but a lot of people are willing to make a little less today and not have to work as hard, right? So we established, the halacha is that that's how much is fair for them to get paid, and that's what we pay them, exactly.
The guy wouldn't agree to do it. Maybe he's just saying that after the fact.
Possibly would have been.
If you were to ask him when you had work, how much would you take this job to do nothing, he might have taken it. You don't know that. So since there's a market rate for that, you could assume that he would
The
take
question
it.
is, why isn't the guy's fault? Because the school wasn't ready, wasn't ready.
Not his fault, that's what getting paid.
He's not getting-
Not his fault. In those days, people worked a certain amount of days and they rested the other days. So it's another day of rest. You'll work tomorrow. You didn't schlep today, you'll schlep tomorrow.
Slap, but there's no sport.
You'll schlep tomorrow.
That's why he's in Pittsburgh, just like before. He's just like-
I think it's a different environment now. It's like everybody always wants to work and make more money, and like it's you really messed me up if I didn't. But I'm always like, okay, I'm ready to take. Even there are people now, they're ready to take an easier job, make less money. They don't want to work hard. They're happy with less money and having a more relaxed life and being, cutthroat and out there on Wall Street or wherever. And that's how some people are. So that was about workers who showed up to work. So we clarified that they don't, we said Elam Zelzal Terumas. We clarified if they actually showed up to work, it's a different story, and we decided how much to pay them. Now we're going to also make a Bamedra Mamurim to clarify in a case where not that I hired you to do a daily job, like go pick up tool from the next city or go plow my field. I hired you to wash my car. I gave you, it's called kablonos. I gave you a set job. I hired you to build a box for me, or I hired you to clean my shirt, to sew a dress for me, or something like that. And then they, so we're going to learn right now. So Bamedra Mamurim Shalei Hischilu b'malacha. If they didn't do the job, so then nobody owes anybody money if either of them backed out. Aval Hischilu b'malacha. But if the workers started working, so then they quit, or he quit. We'll see in a second. So then shamin lahem masha also. You have to figure out how much they did. So let's say I hired a guy to do a job for $100 and they did half the job. I got to pay them 50. Kate said the Brisa clarifies. Kiblu kama lichtzar b'shnei slayim. They agreed to cut down the guy's kama, the guy's harvest. They agreed to cut down his field for 2 slayim. Katzru chetzia. They cut half and then they backed out a middle. V'yinichu chetzia, and they left the other half. Or they agreed. They accepted upon themselves beged lereg to weave a piece of clothing b'shnei slayim for 2 slayim. Argu chetzia. They wove half of it. And they left the other half. So then, we calculate how much they got done. 50%, they get 50% of the money. 40% of the money, and that's how much they get paid. Now the case will change. What happens if I hired them for 2 slayim to cut my field for 2 slayim? And they did half. Fine, so they did half. So I'm supposed to pay them half. But now, for me to find the other half, the price went up. It's good. The way the price says it costs 6 dinarim. So sela is 4 dinars. So sela is like $1, let's say, and 4 dinarim are like coins or quarters. So originally the price was $2 for the whole field. They quit in middle, so we're supposed to pay them $1, 50%. But now I need to spend 6 dinarim, which is 6 quarters, which is $1.50. It's $1.50. It's a sela and a half. You could call it 6 dinarim. You could call it a sela and a shekel, because a shekel is 50 cents. So the sela is $1, shekel is 50, dinar is a quarter. So now the rest of the work costs 6. So what happens now? Is it just too bad of me and now I have to find workers for 6? Or because it's going to cost me 6, so then the first guys, I only paid them 50 cents, even though they did half the job, I only paid them 50 cents because I need to leave myself over $1.50 to get the job done. What will it be? So we already learned in our Mishnah, well, whoever was here by last year, if you learned the Mishnah, that of course, if the workers backed out, it's Yad Balabayas Alol Yaino. I have the upper hands. I only give them 50 cents because I need to hold on to $1.50 to now hire workers at the new rate to finish the job. But in the Brisa, we're actually learning now a different opinion. This opinion that we're about to learn right now, he holds that it's Yad Pailim Alal Yaino. Pailim have a right to quit in the middle of a job, and if they did half, you got to pay them half. And now it's going to cost you $1.50 to finish the job. Sorry, it's going to cost you $1.50. What?
I would say that because I'm paying them.
Why not?
Because now you have to pay them more. You have to pay more, right?
That's what he's saying.
They're gonna pay 6, so now you're gonna pay.
Give them half, and you give the new workers $1.50. And the job costs you 10 dinar instead of 8 dinar, 10 quarters instead of 8 quarters.
You're right. You already did half a job. You're supposed to do a whole job, and that's costing you more.
So it's a machlekes tanaim. If a worker has a right to back out and say, we made up $2 for the field, they did half, pay me half, or a worker, if he does that, he's on the lower, he's yadei al tachtaina. So in our Mishnah, we learned yadei al yaina. So everybody's assuming that, of course, you withhold that money, then now it's costing you more. This Tana holds yadei al yaina. They have a right to do that. Workers' rights, Things shifted in America in the last 50 years in these kind of cases. If the worker, there's much more rights and you have to pay them anyway, right? So this Tana leans a little more liberal, that the workers have have a right to leave in the middle of the day and you still need to pay them. So let's see that inside. We're holding Haya Yafa. Haya Yafa Shisha Dinarim, if now it became worth Shisha Dinarim, which is a sela and a half to finish the job, Noisulem Sela, he still has to give them their sela, their $1 for the first half that they did, even though you're going to now need 6 to get the job done. Or, by the way, Yigmur Malachtan, they could finish the job, and they could take the 2 slime we originally made up. Now, that's obvious, and so later the Gemara is going to say, Pshita, the Gemara is going to analyze this din. Like, what are you telling me? That they can finish and get 2? Of course.
Who's backing out?
The workers. Workers backed out. Now to do the job, we needed 6 dinar, which is a sell and a half. So this Tana holds, they still get paid a seller for the half they did, and too bad. But he adds, if they want to finish the job like we originally made up, they change their mind from backing out, they go back to doing the job, then they're going to get the original 2 that was promised to them, which seems obvious. Vim Sela.
What happened if the Balabas backed out?
We're going to get to it.
Well, it's obvious because they come and say, listen, we're not finishing it. You want us to finish it, then you gotta pay more. How can we made a mistake? We made a mistake on the original price, but now for you to finish it costs more. That's what
That's negotiation.
V'im Sela, where are we holding? We're holding
The
V'im.
price didn't change, so the second half would cost the same seller. But he would have paid.
Right. If the price didn't change, so the second half would yeah, thank you. The price didn't change, so he pays the first guys to sell, and the second guys will get a sell. No, he wasn't hurt. Rabbi Daisa argues, and Rabbi Daisa is like what our Mishnah held. Rabbi Daisa Omer, this is all in this long price. Rabbi Daisa says, Shamalem, Asha Asili Asais, we make a cheshbon of what still needs to get done, what the future holds for us. Hayafa Shisha Dinarim, if it was going to cost 6 dinar, which is a sell and a half to get the job done, so then nice and lehem shekel, he only pays the first workers, even though they did half the job, they're not going to get their full seller, they're only going to get a shekel, which is 2 dinarim, which is a half a seller. Nice and shekel. Or a yigmar malachtan, the workers could change their mind back and complete the job, and they could take the 2 slayim that was agreed to them, v'im sela, and if to complete the rest of the job, remain the same price at a seller. So Naisalam seller, if he could find workers to complete the job for another seller, so then the first workers get seller because they did half, and the next guys will get paid a seller because it only still costs the seller to complete the second half of the job. Now, Bamedvar Mamurim is where we're going to talk about we're still going to be talking about where the workers backed out. Bamedvar Mamurim, when is it that you only have tarumis? When it's bedavar she'ein avad, it's not a davar avad, right? So the example we gave you, I hired guys, and the night before he backed out. I can't take you to the airport, so I'm annoyed. I have to find a new taxi driver. But you didn't cause me any major loss. Ava bedavar avad. If it's a davar avad, you backed out on me. There's something that has to happen, and if it doesn't happen now, I'm going to lose this investment. Let's say the example that you put the flax to soak, and right now it's supposed to come out of the water. If you leave it there, it's gone. And it must come out today. So avad b'davar avad, if it's a b'davar avad, and then they all of a sudden back out on you, when they're supposed to start working. So in that case, it's not tarumas. In that case, the workers take a big hit over here. And you can rent workers for whatever price it's going to get you to get workers. You can spend a lot of money to get workers, and those workers who backed out on you are going to have to foot that bill. Or you're allowed to trick them into doing the work, like we learned in our Mishnah. Here the Brisa elaborates. Ketzad mitan, how do you trick them into doing the work? He tells them, I told you I'm going to pay you a selah, I'm going to pay you double. Come. Come and take two. And then when it comes time to pay, he only actually pays them one. He just fooled them into finishing the job. Now, we said either you trick them into doing it or you just rent other workers on their tab. How much could you go? How crazy could you go? 2, 3, 4, like, if it's hard to find workers, could you offer, thousands of dollars? So until how much could you go? Zak the Mishnah, you could go even up to 40 and 50 zuz, and the Gemara is going to talk about this as well, what exactly that means. Bamedvar mamurim. Now, when is it that by a davar avad you're allowed to trick them into doing it, or you're allowed to go get workers for a lot of extra money? That's only bisman she'ein sham peilim. You can't easily go and find other workers who are ready to do it for the same price. So you're a little bit annoyed that they quit. You have to go get new workers, but there are people around who are able to do it. But if you do have workers there who are ready to do the job, and he told them, go get those workers, then he could only have ta'arumas. He could only have ta'arumas in that case. And he's not allowed to go and trick them to work, promise them double and get them to work. And he's not allowed to go tell workers, who wants this job, I'm willing to pay 10, 20. You can't just go splurge. Just to go get regular workers. They're just a little annoyed that you have to go through the whole process again, but you have to get that done.
Who's telling who to go get?
The workers that quit say, don't trick you have no right to now hire other workers on our bill. Go hire regular normal workers. They exist. They're out there. There's people who are willing to do work. Let's go at least to the bottom of the page for today. So we have a couple more minutes. We could do it. So now we're going to learn a little story. This brisa was being taught before Rav. So the Gemara is going to say right now, Tani Tana Kamei de Rav. The Tana was teaching before Rav. Now this Tana doesn't mean the Tanaim from the era of the Tanaim, because Rav was from the Amirayim. He was from the first Amirayim, but there was a Tanaim and Amirayim. There were certain Amirayim that they were called the Tana because there was no printed Mishnayos, right? So they were called the Tana because they were the ones who were Bucky and all the Mishnayos and Brises. And they were the ones who would always quote on Beis Medrash, there's a Mishnah like this, there's a Brisa like this. And they would read, so to say, not read, but they would say over Mishnayos and Brises before the Beis Medrash, before the Amirayim. So this is a story where Tani Tana Kamei Rav, this person who was a Tana who was quoting the Brisa, he was teaching this Brisa before Rav. He said it over before Rav. And he said the din that if they showed up to get the wheat to Tua, and there was no Tua to do, that the din was Noislam Schar Mishalom, pay them in full. Noislam Schar Mishalom, pay them in full. So right when Rav heard that, they have to pay them in full. Amar Lei, Rav told this Tana who was repeating the Brisa, Chavivi Amar, my uncle, and his uncle was Reb Chia, his uncle was actually a Tana. Rav was the first Amir, Reb Chia was a Tana. He said, Amar Lei, Chavivi, my uncle said that Ilu Ana Havai, if I would have been that owner who hired workers and they didn't end up working, Lo Yava Yehivna Lehen, I would have not paid them in full. Ela Kapel Batal, I'm only going to pay them like a Kapel Batal. Va'at Amris Noislam Schar Mishalom, and you're saying that it says in a Brisa Noislam Schar Mishalom. My uncle says that if he would have been that owner, he would have only paid like a Kapel Batal. So he's challenging the din of the Brisa. But something's a little odd here, right? We know that the Brisa, a line later, clarified that Noislam Schar Mishalom doesn't mean full. It means you pay them the full amount, which is due to them, which is like a Pile Batal. The Brisa actually said that. So what's going on over here? This is a story that happened. This Tana, who's in Amira, is saying over this Brisa before Rav, and Rav tells him, my uncle disagrees. He says that you're supposed to only get like a Pile Batal. Practic Gemara. What's going on here? Taka said in the Brisa, you can't compare someone who comes fully loaded to someone who comes back with an empty load. Or someone who goes to the field and works, someone goes to the field and just does nothing over there. So the Gemara says what happened was they didn't finish the brisa. The guy who was saying this Tana who was repeating over this brisa, he started saying the brisa. He paused over there. So Rav didn't understand. It's not the halacha that he knows, but as far as he knows, it's not the way it's supposed to be. So the brisa just wasn't. They stopped mid sentence, or they took a little break over here, or he cut them off. They did not complete it before him. Some people say Seimul Chamei. Rav did hear the whole brisa. V'hachi kamar. This is what he meant to say. Chavivi Amar. My uncle said, "I havai ana lo yahivna leklal." That Chavivi is saying that his uncle is saying that not just he's arguing differently. He taka learned the brisa that Meslan Schar Mishalom means you get paid like a pile bottle. But he says in the name of Chia that if I would have been that owner, I would have paid them nothing, not even like a pile bottle.
In which case?
What?
The field was wet.
So why? So because in the case where I hired you to do a job and then it rained and the field got wet, so it's your mazel. Like Rashi says, what's Rashi's lashon? Mazlayu garam, your mazel caused this, so it's not my problem. So I actually have to pay you nothing. And now the Gemara is going to go into whole sugya where if I hire workers, what the expectations are? Are they supposed to understand that if it's might rain, they might not have a job? Are they not supposed to understand that? What did you hire them to water a field? Then maybe that's quite obvious. I hire you to water a field. It's going to rain. I don't need you. If I hired you to do work in a field, not always when I hire you to do work in a field, just because it rains, that means I can't do the work. Depends maybe on the field. Is it a muddy? Maybe it's on a slope. Rain doesn't affect the job. So, and then what's about it if you hired workers and to water a field and then the river overflowed? Is that an expected event, not expected? Are they even supposed to know that there's a river nearby? Are these workers local? Are they not local? And we're going to get into that whole topic because of this version of Rav. So because we quoted the Brisa, we have the story of Rav arguing with the Brisa. First, we thought he argued and said it was a mistake. He just didn't finish the Brisa. Now we're saying that Rav Chia is saying that he says he would have not paid at all. And the truth is, there are cases when you don't have to pay at all. And there are cases when you have to pay in full. And there are cases when you pay like a pile bottle. And now we're going to quote a whole bunch of cases, but we maxed out our hour. So let's just stop right over here. Let's do the Ikadamri. Ikadamri, Saimua Kamei. They completed the Brisa before. And Vahachi Kamar, this is what he said. Chavivi Amar, my uncle, which was Rav Chia, said, I hava ana. If I was that owner, that Balabayas, Lo Yavi Yivna Likla, would have not given them anything. And you say that I should pay them like a pile bottle. So, but what's pshat? You can argue at a Brisa. So Elakasha. So it's a kasha, el kasha hach. So now this price is taka a question on what Rav's saying, the name of his uncles. Like the Gemara, like kasha. It'll depend. The din will depend if you get paid like a bottle or you don't get paid at all. It will depend on how the cider la'ari midu'urta, how the loy cider la'ari midu'urta. It depends if they went to tour the field the night before. If I took them the night before, say this is the field I want you to work on. So good workers are supposed to know that if it rains, this field they're not going to be able to operate here tomorrow. It'll be impossible. The conditions won't be good. So if they saw the field and then it rained, yeah, too bad on the workers should have known that there's not going to be any work for them. But if he hired them and he didn't take them to see the field, then how were they meant to know that? They thought, why are they supposed to think the rain is going to affect them doing whatever he asked them to do? Kihad Amar Rava, like this din that Rava says, Haiman da Agar Agiri Lirifka, people who hire workers to dig like a canal along the field. Va'asa Mitra Umal Yamaya. And rain came and filled up the field with water. So over there, he says clearly, Rava says, if they were sowing the field the night before, say did the parliaments, they're lost. They know the conditions there, and they should have understood if it rains, there's no job here tomorrow. But if he didn't show them the field the night before, so then say to the Balbayas, the Balbayas is lost. In that case, he has to pay them like a pile bottle. This is where we're going to stop. So we have a brisa that said you have to pay like a pile bottle. We have Rav who says, no, you shouldn't pay at all. And the answer is that it's not a question because it depends what the case is, what the workers should have expected. Were they shown the field the night before or not? Like we see clearly, Rava says it then that if you hire workers to dig a rifka, it will depend if they were shown the field the night before, if they get paid nothing if the rain showed up, or if they get paid like a pile bottle if the rain shows up. And now we're going to have another din Vamarava and Vamarava and Vamarava, more cases where you hire workers, and what is the expectation, how much do they get paid?
What's not trying to say? Here's a price, he says no. In a different case,